Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining us for another one of our interviews as part of our IPA in Conversation with interview series, where we are looking at the impact of the COVID pandemic on publishers around the world. I trust that by now you will have been able to watch some of our other interviews. In any case, I invite you to go to our website for a lot more information about how publishers around the world are responding to this pandemic. Today, it is a real pleasure for me to speak to Trasvin Jittidecharak in Bangkok. Trasvin has her own publishing house, Silkworm Books, but is also Secretary General of the ASEAN Book Publishers Association, and will talk to us about a very important region in the world. ASEAN is the Association of Southeast Asian Nations and was founded in 1967. It is an intergovernmental organization that aims to promote economic growth and regional stability among its 10 members. Those members are Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, Brunei, Laos, Myanmar, Cambodia, and Vietnam. The ASEAN Economic Community was established in 2015, envisioning the bloc as a single market with free flow of goods, services, investments, skilled labor, and a more open movement of capital. The total population of ASEAN is 650 million people, with a combined GDP of $2.8 trillion US. So that sounds like a very important market. Trasvin, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi. Hello, everyone, and thank you for having me, Hugo.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. And so let's start perhaps with some questions I have prepared for you, Trasvin. Could you tell us more about the ASEAN Book Publishers Association? Could you tell us more about the countries you represent and their aggregated publishing markets?
Right. Thank you. First of all, I'll give you some background of the ABPA, or ASEAN Book Publishers Associations. It's founded in 2005 by the Publisher Association of Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines, Malaysia, and Singapore. The first five, we always call that, because when ASEAN was established, it was by these 5 countries. So the first 5 started again. And later, Brunei, Vietnam, Myanmar, Laos, and Cambodia joined us. But Vietnam and Myanmar has been very interesting emerging market with a lot of young people. Together, besides, of that 650 million people, 40% are under 25. So it's a very young countries. Well, you have some aging society like Singapore and Thailand. We have a lot of old people, but the rest of the region have a lot of young people. You can see that it's dynamic. However, the representative from Brunei, Laos, and Cambodia, they are government agencies. They don't have a real. These 3 countries still doesn't have a real Publishers Association, but they have publishing, they have publishers, they have book markets, but not real association in that sense. ABPA had the Secretariat Office in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and it's unfortunately because of this COVID-19. Otherwise, you and I would be meeting there with this year, Kuala Lumpur as designated as a UNESCO World Book Capital. So
yeah, that's a shame.
Yeah. Otherwise, we would have interesting working time and enjoyable time together there. So our region is culturally diverse. Each country have its language. We have a lot of ethnicities and with dialects, different religions. Philippines are mainly Catholic and Muslim. Indonesia is the biggest Muslim state in the world. And Thailand, Myanmar are Buddhists, and Cambodian, Singapore are mixed. Malaysian are Muslims, so we have all these differences of religious and belief. You know, unlike Latin America, which majority are Catholic, so it's that kind of easy in many ways. And you speak Spanish, so it's at least you have something in common. We have something in common. You know, we have snacks, we have food.
delicious food, by the way.
So at least, you know, if you can't speak to each other, you can invite us to eat something, and then we'll be happy. And, you know, by 5 minutes, then we start talking. It's okay. So that's about it. We have a high fertility rate, and the book market is promising because of the 40% under 25 age, under 25. So, you know, these people, I mean, Vietnam and Singapore have a very high rank in OECD, you know, the PISA score. They have a very, I mean, Singapore was top 3. Vietnam was surprisingly coming up really high. I mean, the rest of us are about in the middle, you know, in 50 something, but still. And you have Philippines, which fluent in English, and they had export as laborers and services around the world. So these young people, actually, they need to upskill. They need to learn, and it's a huge market, I think.
That sounds promising, especially I guess for educational publishers. But may I also ask you, Trasvin, in this interesting and to some extent diverse markets, for those in the audience who don't know, could you tell us a bit more about the recent times? I mean, how the lockdown measures have affected your region? How has it been different in different countries you represent?
Oh, the pandemic affected us tremendously because for a country like Thailand, you know, our GDP, tourism contribute to our GDP is like almost 20%. So when there are no tourists, that was like, everything was shut down. And I mean, at the beginning of the pandemic in early January, though we respond quite fast, but at the time people predicted that Thailand will be the sort of second most cases after China, which is true at the beginning, but due to we have a very good healthcare system.
Okay.
And it was able to control, you know, so our healthcare system is #1 in Asia, not ASEAN, in Asia.
In whole Asia, in the health system in Thailand. Yes. Okay, that's.
And in Singapore and Malaysia, actually the healthcare system are good too, but then there are some cluster that happen later on, which make the lockdown is the most harsh. I mean, in Thailand, we have lockdown, and the bookstore is affected the most because most of the bookstore are in the shopping mall. The shopping mall had to be closed, so the bookstore had to be closed.
Okay.
One of the big 3 change. The income had dropped like 90%.
90%, that's 90%. Astonishing.
And in Singapore and Malaysia also because of the total close down. I mean, Malaysia, you know, in the first 2 weeks, only the head of the family allowed to go out to get some essential thing for like twice a week. And Singapore is also the same thing. So that was very difficult. But Singapore and Malaysia the government provide the package, you know, to support them. Thailand was half and half, but for Vietnam, they have a very good control also. So it's not so bad for them. But
Okay.
we don't have a real a clear statistic from Laos and Cambodia, Brunei. But
Okay.
I think they are similar. Indonesia's the hardest in the sense of they didn't lock down.
They didn't.
They didn't because, you know,
Okay.
for economy reason. And then now I think they have the highest death rate from the COVID-19. Okay. And I think people are very scared, but yeah.
Sorry to hear that. It's interesting to see how there are differences in the different countries, in the different markets. And now that you mentioned that, so in some countries, bookstores were closed, but were home deliveries allowed?
Yes, yes, that is allowed. So in Thailand, you know, the online sales were up, but of course what we call up, it's up from the same period, and I mean it's triple, but it doesn't mean that it could replace the sales from the bookstore.
Okay, so if I understood correctly, the online sales have tripled, but not necessarily replacing the lost sales in the bricks and mortar stores.
In Myanmar, the online sales stood up about 70% at the same time. And the sales from bookstore, this is Myanmar, you know, they're a new small country and doesn't have the logistic system yet. But I think in the big city, the bookstore located only in the major cities. And the bookstores, they didn't close down the bookstore, but the sale was dropped 30%.
Okay. And what about digital? What do you think was? Could you tell us the rough split, perhaps, of sales in physical format versus digital before and after all this crisis?
Ebook is not big in our region. I mean, compared to physical book, you know, it's less than 5%.
Okay.
I mean, the market share. And in Thailand, Singapore, and Malaysia, it's about the same. It's double. But you know that the base is so small, so double doesn't mean much, but still double.
Okay. But anyway, interesting.
Double from 2%, you know, so that's nothing.
Well, but anyway, it doubled. I mean, yeah, it shows a little bit. I mean, we have been, as you know, doing these interviews, and we have seen, I mean, one of the trends is that in many countries, people went to online shopping, a lot of online physical book shopping as well, but also in many countries, an increase in digital.
Yes, the online or sales of physical book is increasing. That for sure, and you know that the double. It's for Thailand, I think it went up double or more than double. We don't have the figures from Vietnam yet. They just finished their online book fair, and they still haven't have the available numbers for us. I tried to get it, you know, before this interview, but
okay. And Trasvin, when you mentioned, and we were also talking a moment ago of the decrease in sales that to some extent, if I understood correctly, has been up to 90%. I mean, that's crazy.
That only from one bookstore chain.
From one bookstore chain. But in general, have you seen a decrease? I mean, probably a decrease in sales.
Yes, because most of the bookstores in Thailand were closed, and they were not allowed to have a book fair, which is the retail fair. So altogether, the only not replacement, what we had at the time, that Pubat, which is the Publisher and Bookseller Association of Thailand, make a quick decision even before the government announced the lockdown, that we would change on-ground book fair to online book fair, and we make a lot of publicities, and the buyers, the reader participate well. You know, I mean, the first day that of the opening, our server crashed, so we have to, yes, because like 100,000 people, you know, hit the button at the same time, and I mean, the provider, the platform provider, didn't expect that, even though we had warned them that don't underestimate our readers, you know. So
well, that's also some good news that it crashed because of so many people wanting to get in.
Right, because actually they want to go to the book fair and they can't, so they were eager to know what it is all about of this online. And then they make fun, they're joking, you know, because normally at our book fair, people would just flood in on the first day at the opening.
Okay.
So they would type it in and say, who stepped on my foot? You know, I'll get it back. And then they will say, there's no car park. I still can't park in my car. So that kind of thing, they were joking, they were funny. We were laughing. I mean, it was a good atmosphere, but of course, only 30% of our members joined this online book fair. But at the same time, we estimate that the income of the book fair also about 30%. So it wasn't that bad, but you know, compared to the physical book, the on-ground book fair. So.
But it's amazing that you could, in a very short time, organize it was a fully virtual fair then.
Yes, we had, you know, the book talk. Every publisher were participating with their fan club and etc. So it was fun, but I must compliment our the young board members of our association, that they are very dynamic and they work almost 24 hours, you know, before the fair, and trying to uplift the publisher's spirit. So in that sense, it has been a good experiment. So
absolutely.
We weren't really sort of down or sad or desperate, you know. I mean, we're desperate, but we don't feel that bad.
But that's encouraging to see how, and we have also seen this example of how publishers have been innovative and finding new solutions to get to readers and to get over this difficult situation. So we have seen how publishers to some extent have responded. There's further down the road another question, but how have also governments responded in the region? And I was thinking of the drop in sales, and which is difficult time for many companies. Have governments responded somehow to support publishers and the publishing sector in general? And what about authors and booksellers?
Well, only Singapore government that have the package for authors and booksellers, but not publishers in specific. But I mean, we are included into other business. The government was, you know, Singapore have the overall to cover package to author, layout designer. You know, some get this monetary assistance. Bookstore have given rental rebate via the proprietor, you know, compulsory by the government. But there's no other, I mean, for the art sector, Singapore government provided, so some literature publisher got support, but not all publishers. Nothing special for publishers, but I mean, you can apply for as a business entity that you would get help. That's for Singapore, but Singapore is one of the richest government in the world, right? And Malaysia had have divided into support into two categories. You know, a general support for SME business like soft loan, tax deferment loan, moratorium, wage subsidies, that kind of support, that kind of help. And Thai government offers similar to Malaysia government. So Thai government, Malaysia government are more or less the same. But Malaysian government also help, they call it the digital marketing grant. So MABOPA, Malaysia Book Publishers Association, was able to apply for the online book fair support. And their online book fair will be on, I think, next week or something. So it will be interesting to see how they develop, because once Thai Publishers Association has started, and you probably already heard that we have the webinar for the ASEAN Publishers Association, which were well attended, you know. So now Malaysia will doing it, and Philippines are considered to do it. For Myanmar and Vietnam, I don't think the government did any. I mean, they hand out some monetary assistance, but not that high, you know, not that small of a personal help. Philippines government didn't do anything, and Indonesian doesn't really have package, just the discount coupon for books and that kind of thing, free ad time.
So I suppose it has also to do with the economic situation, as you mentioned, as if perhaps Singapore is one of the wealthiest, your wealthiest members, it has to do with that. And you know that from IPA we have been calling on governments to support their creative industries. And how about, Trasvin, publishers, we have seen that publishers all around the world, and I would be interesting to know what publishers of your membership have done locally to support society during lockdown. How have they adapted to support teachers or pupils or parents needing to entertain children?
I don't think they have been doing much. In Thailand, for children publishers were trying to have this online thing to keep mother and children, or you know, family that is say that they are together because of the lockdown, and to keep entertaining them in that sense. But nothing unlike your read the world program and that kind of thing, that we haven't done that.
But you could, of course, participate also on the Read the World program.
But you have to do it in local language, you see here in our part of the world, except in Malaysia and Singapore and Philippines, they can participate for the Read the World. But not for Thai family. That would be difficult. However, I don't know about the other association had started something, but for my association, for PUBAT, we start to work on the reading program, and next week we will talk to the programmer that we want to create the reading app program, you know. So, I'm not supposed to review the detail yet, but once it's done, I think it will be exciting. So I have to hold this on. Maybe next month I can talk to you about this.
Sure.
It will be fun.
Please share.
For developing world.
Okay. Please share the news with us when you're ready to do so.
And we hope that we could share with our ASEAN members. I think that's what we are cooking up at the moment.
Okay, that sounds interesting. So Trasvin, and my last question to you, would be that, well, nowadays, perhaps it's difficult right now, but I'm sure there are positive things to this as well. What do you think the positive outcomes might be for the future?
Well, right now, the most positive thing that I see is that actually this pandemic make us in ASEAN closer. I mean, we were close before, but we even closer now during the lockdown because of thanks to all this software, you know, the Zoom meeting or whatever, that we have more time to talk, we have more time to reflect, and we have more time to seriously think about how we're going to adapt and adjust ourselves. I think there's an opportunity, and you start to work and think more strategically. You know, before we just, I mean, it's just like you keep moving without thinking. You have no time to stop. And there's a Chinese proverb said that when there is the thunderstorm, take one step backward, and then the storm will calm down. And I think this pandemic remind me of this proverb very much.
Okay, thank you, Trasvin. But I think it's encouraging to know how, as you mentioned, publishers, and I think we have been seeing that all around the world, are adapting to circumstances, are working together with their authors, with their bookselling community. You also mentioned that it has brought your members more together, which I think is also very, very important, especially under circumstances like these. So it's encouraging to know that, Trasvin. So Trasvin, it has been great talking to you. Thank you so much for joining this interview. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for having me. Thank you.